there's no test. It's invisible. It's an invisible illness. And, with something like a stress fracture on your rib, a scan will show that to be diagnosed through process of elimination, and there's nothing you can do there and then which will say, okay, yeah, you have really overstepped the line from a physical perspective. You need to have a few days backing off.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. We've got another great guest in the house today. We've got Susie Dear, and without further ado, Tom, would you like to give a little bit of an introduction of who our guest is today?
Yeah. Welcome, Susie, to the podcast. Again, it's the last of our Rogue athletes that we've had on the podcast. So again, exciting to get into this one and just get a little bit more of the backstory. But just for everyone to know, some of her achievements during her career. So double Henley Royal Regatta winner, but in the same year. So won both the pair and the 8 in 2021.
That's pretty special.
World Cup 3 bronze medal, head of the Charles winner, part of the Tokyo squad. World University Championship silver medal, and then I think one of the most impressive things is 2 years from the first time you sat in a boat to when you raced for GB. So 2013 was when you started rowing, and 2015 is a GB vest at SM Regatta. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Right, I think we'll start with all our guests is how you got into rowing.
How I got into rowing. So growing up and stuff, I didn't know anything about rowing. I literally, the only boat I ever got in was a sailing boat. So I grew up around boats, around horses, very lucky. Mum and dad sort of got us into all sorts of sports. And then when I went to university, so I started at Brookes in 2011. I think it's safe to say that I went out a bit too much and didn't really spend much time at the actual university. And no surprise, failed my first year monumentally. I think I actually got 13% in one module, which was impressively bad.
Wow, the whole 13%.
It was, not my best. And in that same summer when my results came out after my first year, it was the 2012 Olympic Games, and there was a lot on they were showing a lot on TV about how the majority of the team had done a lot of rowing at university. And I guess being quite tall and being into sport when I was younger, Mum and Dad just thought, you need to sort your life out, basically.
So rowing was just the way to keep you on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. So Mum and Dad were like, Suze, come on, Brookes is meant to be really good for rowing. You're tall, you can be athletic. At this point, I wasn't particularly athletic. I had way too many dominoes and quite a few VKs. But anyway.
Showing your age with the VK.
Yeah. So yeah, that September, I went and signed up at Brookes.
Cool. So what happened after?
What, immediately after?
Well, how did you do it? So we speak to a lot of people. They say when they first started rowing, it was just going to be for fun, and they weren't going to take it seriously.
Oh yeah.
Was there a period like that, or did it go quite quickly into something serious, or just take its time?
I think the first sort of 6 months really took its time. I very begrudgingly signed up, and I wasn't too keen on the idea, if I'm completely honest. I was very much like, I've got my friends outside of rowing. I'm not going to go to the socials. I don't want to do this and all the rest of it. I think that attitude lasted maybe about a week, and almost immediately I just thought, this is awesome. The team culture, the environment, the socials, everything was great. And initially, I think I then sort of did it for the people rather than the sport. And as time went on, I think, my coach, Alan French, shout out, great guy.
No, we know Alan. Yeah, he's a Reading Bluecoats now. Yeah, we fixed the egos there. He's a legend.
I owe so much to that man. He's an absolute legend. He saw through the tears and the tantrums, and really helped me to get to where I am now. And yeah, so I would say probably it'd be interesting to hear what Alan says about this.
Yeah.
But I think maybe 6 months into my rowing career, that's when I started thinking, actually, like I could be quite good at this. And sort of it then progressed from there.
I think what's really interesting about your career in particular is that you sort of started it a little bit later than most people. So, for example, I got into rowing when I was about 13, and I think it was the case for you as well, Tom. Morgan said she started rowing when she was 10.
Yeah.
But how old were you when you started?
20? Yeah.
They said most, but then again, but we've discussed this as well, rowing, most people don't pick up rowing, especially if you're going to do sweep rowing until you're sort of 13, 14 anyway. So most people who get into it have a sport that they've enjoyed, like done to a, not necessarily a high level, but like really got them into like that way of being an athlete. Yeah.
So in my old club, we weren't actually allowed to go into sweep boats until you were like 16. I think it was just to protect your back.
Yeah.
It was the same as Leander as well.
Yeah, there's no sweep events in Britain under J14, I think. And J13 is like octopus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quads, yeah.
Oh, the octopus.
Yeah. I also want to know first, like, how was Brookes as from a novice perspective? Because I think a lot of people go there because it's renowned for being a good rowing university. And I know a lot of guys who I rowed with who were good rowers at school, so they were kind of good rowing when they went there. And for them, like, it was definitely the mentality. But for someone who's never rowed before,
so I think I was very lucky that in the year I signed up to join the novice squad was a year where they were running a full novice program. I think this current season is the first time since my year they've ran a full program full time. I could be wrong, but I think so. That's 10 best part of 10 years. So yeah, I really lucked out with the timing of it, because there'd be absolutely no way I would have been part of Oxford Brookes University Boat Club if that program wasn't there. And yeah, I remember just sort of being quite starstruck by everyone. There wasn't very many women there, so it was mainly men. But you'd guys coming in like their GB lycras, and knowing that they've just got a medal at under 23s or something, I'd be like, oh my god, like this is amazing. But I think the way I describe Brookes to anyone is it was just such a big family. Like everyone looked out for each other, and you push for the person in front, person behind. So yeah, big family vibes, to be honest.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. It's good to hear. Like they say, like it's a different perspective for someone who's never rowed, who's been there, but still found that squad like a really like fun thing to be a part of.
But I think also like they all merge into one, but I think I spent about 5 years at Brookes. And that was all I knew. So I'd never been part of any other boat club. So I thought Brookes was the norm. Like I thought the Brookes approach was how everyone approached rowing. But as my rowing career has developed, it's not particularly normal.
Yeah, it would be a completely different sport if every club approached it like Brookes do.
Sure. But whatever they're doing is working. So
absolutely.
Other clubs should look a little bit.
I think it's not even too shy to say that Brookes might be one of the best universities to row for in the world in terms of like the quality of their rowing programs. If you have a look at how many Henley wins they get each year,
the depth as well. Yeah, the squad.
Yeah, I remember I did the training session with Brookes once, probably 7 years ago in about 2016, and we just had 6 or 7 8s in a session. Like, just the amount of athletes that we got.
Yeah, and I mean, I could talk about Brookes for a very long time, but whenever I talk to anyone about it, like my whole face just lights up. Like I had the best time ever there, and it was a very sad day.
If it's not fun, you're not going to do it, and especially at that level, like you need to enjoy it. As one part of trying to put a program together, when we were doing it, it was like trying to make it fun. As much as rowing is difficult, and you're not going to enjoy every session, like making it fun is going to like have a big part of it, and like having that depth in the squad. And I think high performance centers sometimes get a bad rap because for like poaching or like having like high level athletes join already, but like there's no way you can be running 5, 6, 7, 8s and not be developing your own athletes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Then so then that process then of going from Brookes to the very sharp and polished GB system, how did that come about?
through many highs and lows.
Of course, always.
I stayed at Brookes till 2016, and then I went and rowed with Sydney Rowing Club for a year until 2017. And then I just thought, I did all the dramatic, thank you so much, Oxford Brookes, I've had the best time ever, see you later. And then a year later, I'm like, can I come back? So yeah, then went back to Brookes for another year and did a master's in psychology. And then that year was when I went and raced the pair in Shanghai for the World University Games. And it was during that time where I thought, I love Brookes, but if I want to be making the national team, I need to be around senior athletes, not under 23 athletes. Because by that point I was out of under 23s and had to make the leap from under 23 to senior. So yeah, that's when I did my application for Leander. And yeah, that's that year. So September 2018, I joined Leander Club.
How did you first hear about Leander?
I think I first heard about Leander simply just through Brookes. Like, there were a few athletes that would leave Brookes and go to Leander. Never.
Very few.
No, there's a few. I got I rode with a guy called Adam Moffat, who's now coaching at Teddy's, but I rode him at Leander and he was at Brookes, and I think he had done a bit of both, or I can't remember why, but he had Leander kit. He rode at Leander and when he was at Brookes, and he went to an ergo session in Leander all in one. Some of the boys said, I don't think you want to do that, and he's like, why? Nothing's going to happen. And then one of the coaches, I won't say his name. I don't know which one it was, but apparently, sort of, as the story I've heard goes, like they're chatting in the corner of the gym and like chatting along, and then he just like stops, like out the corner of the eye, he's just spotted this Leander all-in-one, walks up to the front of the machine, waits for him to come to the front of the stroke, grabs the front of his all-in-one, and then as he takes the stroke, rips it off him. Oh, it's like, don't wear that shit in here.
The one I heard was guys going in a Leander lycra, doesn't want the Leander kit in the Brookes gym, so he gets a bunch of the other guys to pick up the erg whilst he's on it and put it outside. Not sure whether that's actually true or not, but as legend says.
Yeah, it's a good urban legend.
Yeah.
It's a good rivalry as well. Like, it's all done, I'm sure. I mean, probably the guy wasn't happy that he lost his all-in-one, but like a lot of it is just trying to get that point across of, if you want to beat something, you're going to have to like really go for it. Yeah. And like, if anything, it's sort of almost pays Leander a compliment that's the club that Brookes used to be worried about, but potentially in the last few years, not anymore.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think the gap's also been bridged in the last few years, certainly. You see so many more athletes that used to row at Brookes or used to row at Leander and just make that swap.
Well, they've had like a huge improvement in tourists and in retaining athletes like, after they finish so it's not just a student club anymore. Yeah. So I think that's made a huge impact on them.
To be honest, I think having thought about the question you said, how did I first hear about Leander? I think it is, to be honest, just seeing people in the kit and then hearing these stories of the Pink Palace and the 1p porridge and all that kind of stuff. But I think, more and more people are coming to Leander, and I don't think it's because they don't like Brookes or they don't want to be part of Brookes, but the depth in women's rowing has come on massively, and it's sort of just a natural progression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a more of a, obviously Brookes training is going to have to run around a student sort of program, whereas Leander has the freedom to train more throughout the day and stuff. So yeah, it's just a different way of doing things, but not necessarily better or worse.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to hear about Australia then. Why the decision to go there, and how was it when you got there?
Well, to be honest, I just thought I want to change, or I was just going to go to Australia.
But good place to go.
Literally as simple as that. I was quite envious of people having an experience in the States. So I would have really liked to have gone there, but I'd used up all my student rowing years at Brookes, so that couldn't really go any further. And then I just thought, well, Australia looks a cool place to go, so I'll just get in touch with Sydney Rowing Club and ask if I can come and row with them for a season, and
awesome.
So rowing's really big in Australia, as well as one of the top rowing nations worldwide. How did you find the training to be different? Was there also like a difference in the atmosphere or in the way that you were taught to row differently in terms of technique, or what was it like?
Well, this was my first experience outside of Brookes, so I had I had to learn quickly that shouting certain things at people wasn't particularly acceptable. But I'd say the biggest difference in Australia in comparison to over here is that, and I mean, it's changed now because we have to scull for part of the trialing system here, but I learned to scull for the first time, and they're big on their sculling, spend a lot of time training in singles, and I'd just been used to smashing around in an 8, so that
very
was
different,
quite a change. Yeah, and it was boiling as well, like absolutely boiling.
Do you forget what a long sleeve is when you're over there?
Oh, well, you want the long sleeve because you get sunburn. You want like a white long sleeve top.
Very sorry.
But no, it was a really cool experience. Made some friends for life whilst I was out there. And I think, to be honest, going over to Australia is probably what made me realise how much I want to row for my country and how much I miss it. Because for the first time in my rowing career, I was rowing for the love of rowing, but I wasn't trialing.
Yeah.
And I really missed that sort of drive to want to impress people, the drive to have a reason and a motivation to push on a 30-minute or a 2K or whatever. I really missed that challenge. And I think, to be honest, that's what fueled the fire to get on the phone to Alan and say, can I please come back to Brookes? As I wanted to give it another go.
So at that point, you've already represented GB. So can you tell us what spurred you on from, deciding that I want to take this more seriously to getting your first GB best? What was that like?
I don't think there's one thing in particular. I think, as I've mentioned a bit before, I first fell in love with the team, and then falling in love with rowing as a sport sort of came second. And I think probably my shift changed from, okay, yeah, I love the team and I love the people I do it with, but actually this sport's pretty cool as well. And I love challenging myself, and I wanted to see how far I could get. I didn't really realise that at the time, I don't think, but looking back, probably that's what it was.
So having then done that Brookes system, then going to Australia and worked out that Brookes isn't how everyone else does it, then coming back and transferring or sort of swapping over or getting into Leander, like how was that again, like making another change, different squad, different way of doing things?
Yeah, it was interesting. I felt really guilty leaving Brookes.
Yeah.
That was a really hard decision, but it was the right thing to do. Joining Leander, yeah. So I started with one of my best mates, Annie Withers. We went through the Brookes system together. She went onto the team. Had to come back to Leander for a bit. So it was really nice to be able to start with her. And then obviously Morg was there. Ruth was there as well. So I felt like, I had most support around me. Had a lot of people who I'd been rowing with for years. But it was interesting because the dynamic is a bit different at Leander. The focus is to win Henley and to get onto the national team. Whereas at Brookes, the focus is to win bucks and win university pennants. And, well, at least at the time I was at Brookes, things have changed now. So for a long time, I was only ever used to doing things for the team. And then next thing you know, actually, you've got to do things for the individual.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite a shift in sort of mentality almost. And it was challenging at times, to have to think, okay, this is what's right for the team, but this is what's right for me. How can I manage this? Because they're not always the same. But, we had a great team at Leander, and everyone was very understanding that actually sometimes someone's got to do something a bit different because that's what's right for them. And yeah, I mean, looking back at when I first started at Leander in comparison to now, it seems like a lifetime ago. That it was a smooth transition, I think. You had a lot of support, and just being with your mates makes all the difference, really.
That's that odd one sometimes when you have to kind of try and do, what's right for you is not necessarily what's right for the team, and that can be a difficult decision. I did one year, I think it was 2011 or 2012 for final trials. James Orme, who'd been rowing in the senior team, got sent back to Leander and I got paired up with him. And at the time, I was just done under 23, so like to get the opportunity to go to the final trials with a senior athlete was like huge.
Yeah.
But my coach, Chris Collar and Leander was like, no, it's 8 heads coming up. Like, I don't care. Like, you're in the 8. Like, you know, you're not going to get any extra sessions in the pairs. It's not happening. And we went out a couple of times, like a third session, we did an extra session, and he wasn't happy about that. And I was like, oh man, like, this sucks. Like, what an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I went to Orm and I said, Orm, listen, like, if you go to like the head coach and say, you know, like, this is my last shot. If I don't get back in the team now, like, it's pretty much over. My rowing career is over. I know the head coach will then go to my coach and be like, look, you've got to get Tom out the 8 and put him in the pair.
Mm.
So he does this, speaks to the head coach. Head coach obviously speaks to Chris. Next day, Chris pulls me to one side and I have to pretend like I didn't know that I'd kind of inceptioned it. It's a bit evil, but like, it was one of the only times I really like had to kind of like try and like work the system in my favor. But then he was like, listen, you know, Mark spoke to me and, you know, we think we're going to let you and Orm just sit in the pair.
Thing is, they've seen it all before. They probably knew that you had that conversation.
Potentially. But yeah, no, like you said, like, that's an interesting one. And it's interesting to hear from, like you said, how much Brookes is focused on the team and how that was what you fell in love with first, and that was the thing that was difficult to leave. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they do so well. And I think with Leander, like you said, because it really is designed to either get you into the national team or not, there is a high turnover.
Mm-hmm.
Most people probably only row there for a couple of years. They either then get...
Or 5.
Well, but in the middle, like having gone
Yeah.
within going up to the squad, maybe some come back. And I think a lot of people look down on or like don't want to get sent back. But I know there's fantastic athletes that have been sent back. Like I know Mo Sabihi went into the senior team and then got sent back to his club. And obviously came back and got Olympic gold medal. So it happens. Yeah. But yeah, that's a different kind of way of doing it.
I mean, Leander just feels like home. You know, you walk in and you're like, oh, I'm back. It's very comforting. And yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just, it has a way of sort of helping people get the best out of themselves, whether that's through the coaching, the environment, you know, the support we have available for us. It's a very special club to be part of.
I think the history of it, like understanding like how successful it's been and going in and seeing the names on the wall and like, you know, the Olympic board at the top of the stairs, like all those things, like just kind of get to like, you feel like backed up by it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you go out and wear that vest, like it stands for something.
Yeah.
Plus an extra motivation to just push harder and to show up every day, you know, because potentially one day you're going to find yourself on one of those boards, and who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, going a bit off topic, but, you know, my name is on the board and I've got pictures on the walls, and seeing how proud and happy it makes my family is a big motivation. You know, like I've had a bit of a setback over the past few years, and actually I think the thing that I found the hardest was not giving the people who have supported me so much that pride of saying, oh, there's my daughter's name on the board, or, you know, oh, her final's on at this time, make sure you tune in, or whatever. You know, that's a big part of it.
I felt so guilty if I didn't perform well, especially because at a rowing event, like your family's going to come down from wherever they live, like drive down to Dorney Lake. They're going to stand there for like 3 hours. They're not going to see you because you're going to, like, you can't go and chill with them or anything. And then you're going to go and race. You don't perform the way you want to perform, and you just feel like horrible that they've spent all this time to see you.
But I mean,
but they don't see it that
way. They don't say it that way. No, they definitely don't. They're so embarrassing with like flags, and like Dad will have his GB handkerchief, like, go serious. Just that. The first time, trip down memory lane, but the first time I ever raced for Great Britain, I was with Annie, and we just won the race, and we were coming into the like medal pontoon or whatever it's called, and we just heard this like commotion behind us, and Annie just went, oh my God. She was like, Suze, don't turn around. Obviously I turn around, and it's all of both our parents, so all 4 parents, like charging down the tow path with flags and like, the hanky. I think maybe it was Annie's mummy had earrings in. I specifically remember GBR earrings. Anyway, the girl Sam in front of me just said, don't worry, first time I rode for Great Britain, Dad wore a cape. I just love it.
The GB family supporters group is a savage group of people. They have their own kit. I remember at one point, like, they made their own fleeces.
Well, I think they're like in competition with each other. Like
who could be more?
Yeah, who could be more embarrassing?
Yeah. Who's got the bigger flag?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2016, I went to watch Coop. It was in Poznan. I happened to be in Poland at that time. And Coop is a junior international competition where you got countries from all around Europe competing. And by far, everyone was like, who are these GB people, you know? Like, all of them are just screaming so loud, and it just kind of leaves an imprint. It's great to see that kind of support network.
My grandma, she can't travel. She's too elderly, bless her. But she'll put, whenever I race for Great Britain, she'll put a GBL flag up her, like, flag post inside her house. It's so, like, she just loves it.
My granny would always, I'd like ring her up after under 23s and be like, how did you do it? Okay, well, yeah, we got a bronze medal. She'd be like, oh, well, that's all right, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm happy. It's good. Like, still got the podium. She's like, but also, did you beat the Germans?
Oh, no.
Granny.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah, so then going back to your time at Leander, obviously the big point to talk about would be back-to-back wins at Henley Royal Regatta. I don't think many people have ever achieved that or even attempted it. So how did that come about, even the decision to do two events?
Yeah, it was a stressful day, but it was awesome. I look back at it and I actually think it was probably one of the best days of my life. It was really, really special. Wasn't my decision. It was my coach's decision, Ross Hunter.
What was the thinking behind it? That you definitely could, or they wanted you to just have more racing experience, or?
I think, don't like bringing it up too much, but because we'd all missed out on so much racing experience with COVID, I think he saw a real opportunity to win a few events.
Yeah.
And it's the more races you can do as an athlete, the better. It just develops you and exposes you to more racing situations. So yeah, I think it was to try be a bit greedy and see how much we can win, but also for the development of the athlete.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Definitely. I think, having come out of that, I definitely saw, like, we were coaching when we came out of that thing, and just like the hunger to race, like, because that is, as much it, like you said, it is stressful and crazy. Like, that's also the reason why you do it.
Exactly. Yeah. I was really, really nervous. I was steering the pair, and I've never steered down the Henley course before, so I was pretty nervous about that. I just had these visions in my head of us crashing into the booms, and on the commentary being like, Leander Club should know better than this. It's their home straight or whatever. But got from A to B fine, so it was all right. But
that's all you need sometimes.
I was very nervous, and I remember on the Sunday morning, so the day of the finals, my brother had just rocked up in his van. He's got this van that he absolutely loves, and does his coffee and camps in his van and stuff like that. So he was like, right, I'm gonna come and watch. Gonna stay in the van. Anyway, he met me in the morning, and we went to go and get a coffee. And he just said to me, bloody hell, Susie, you look like shit. And I was like, thanks, Tom.
That's what you need to hear.
Just what I want to hear the morning of my finals. But I was so nervous. Like, I just looked a bit like a zombie, to be honest. But no, it wasn't.
Had you practiced racing both before? Like, Metamalo, there was no other event where you doubled up?
No.
And how was it in training, like having to split your time between the two?
We weren't allowed. So the focus
extra,
was...
or?
No. So it was a crazy summer, to be honest. So Sam and I, my pairs partner in 2021, we'd gone out and raced at the Third World Cup in Setbacks, came away with a bronze medal. On the plane on the way home, got tapped on the shoulder by the coach that was out with us, and just said, Susie and Sam, are you free to join the Olympic team on their training camp for their pre-Olympic training camp? We were both like,
let me just check my diary.
Yeah.
It seems all clear. Yeah, so that's free. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so busy, but yeah, sure, I could do that fine.
Squeeze it in.
And we were like, yeah. And he was like, it's next Monday for 4 weeks. We were like, yeah, sure, fine. But obviously, it was, coming out of COVID time, so we had to isolate for a week. So we went to Sabaudia for a week, isolated for a week, and then went away with the Olympic team for a week for their training spares for part of the Tokyo squad. So we spent, 6 weeks together rowing the pair. So, we had a lot of prep and time together for that 6 weeks. But, coming back off that camp, we had been taken out of the Leander group for quite a big chunk of time. So, us being away was relatively disruptive to the rest of the group because, they were missing 2 of their athletes who would have raced the 8. But to be honest, I think that's just a testament to the girls at Leander, like to be robust enough to be able to have people out, come back in, just go with the flow. It's quite impressive to be able to do. So yeah, we came back to Leander, and from the word go, Ross just said, focus is to win the Remington. So our group chat was actually called Win the Remington, which is funny.
That's a lot more appropriate than most of the group chat names I've ever had for my crew.
I don't want to know.
Right. You don't.
So yeah, our group chat was called Win the Remington, and that was the focus. We literally didn't row the pair once. First time we rowed the pair before Henley that year. So yeah, we first got in the pair after coming away from that Olympic camp. Was the Wednesday of Henley, or maybe the Thursday even, because it was too busy on the Wednesday.
So, and which day did both events start?
Saturday.
Okay, so you only had to race Saturday and Sunday back to back.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes a bit of a difference.
A big difference, yeah. If your racing starts on Tuesday or Wednesday, and you're racing every day in both events, that's cumulatively quite a few runs down the track.
Definitely adds up, yeah.
Yeah.
And was Henley Royal Regatta happy to space those things out, or did they say no, or they accommodate?
They definitely did accommodate because we did have a few hours in between each run. But yeah, I remember saying to Ross, like, please can we go out in the pair? Like, I'm really worried about steering. Like, we haven't been out, and he just said, like, you're good enough. You don't need to worry. And I remember when we went out. I think I don't know what you guys would say, but I actually think one of the best things about racing at Henley is rowing in the tea break and in the lunch break and stuff, because you see all your mates on the bank like, hey, and you can actually stop and be like, hey, like, if obviously if you're not in the middle of the bus, like, but I love rowing in tea break.
I think a part of the reason why a lot of crews do it is just to be able to absorb a bit more.
Yeah, it's an amazing event, and if you when you're focusing on racing, and when you're in the race, you don't really notice what's around you. So being able to get out and rowing in the lunch break and tea break is really fun. And essential for us in the pair, because otherwise we wouldn't have raced. Yeah. We wouldn't have rowed, before our semi-final. But yeah.
And then, so finals day, which one was first?
The pair.
Oh, okay.
Pair was first. And yeah, I just remember rowing through stewards, and Sam just said, you're about to get your first red box, Suze. And then we went through the line, and it didn't really feel real to me.
It's surreal, yeah.
Yeah, it was very strange. And
then like zero celebration, just paddle it in and get ready.
Oh, we got briefed before, if you win, not when you win, if you win, you got to act really professional. Like, you've got another race in a few hours, but you have to, when you win at Henley, you have to go into like a pontoon and have your interview done. So we went in, had our interview. I think they were briefed to make it quick, so we could get straight onto our recovery. Came into Leander, and every winning crew gets a bottle of Digby on the Leander sparkling wine. Came into the dock, got presented with our Digby, which very soon after got taken away from us.
Yeah, just a precaution.
And then, Ross and Morg, they were waiting on the dock for us. So they brought our blades in, brought our boat in, and we literally had to get straight out of the boat, went into the gym, and started our recovery to make sure we were best prepped for the final in the 8.
Did it feel like a weight off when you've won one out of the two? Were you like less stressed then?
I actually remember thinking that I'm more stressed for the pair because I was just so nervous about the steering. Like, you know, Morg is fantastic cox, and I knew that we just, you don't even worry about that kind of stuff when you're with Morg. Like, obviously her line was going to be great, and she would read the race and, you know, feed all the information back to us. But when you're in a pair, I mean, I guess statistically there's less chance of something going wrong because there's only two of you, but the amount more you have to think about is a lot. So yeah, I remember thinking like, oh, if we just need to get through the pair and then it'll be fine. And then we're warming up in the 8 and I'm like, oh my God, why do they think that? This is so nerve-wracking.
How did the legs feel in the 8? You feeling tired? Or, I mean, it's not uncommon to race twice in a day.
Yeah, I felt good. Felt ready to get box number 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
Certainly, like, you've competed at backs with Brookes, and sometimes you have to do 3 finals in the same day, like 3 races. So definitely used to that with the workload you've done over at Oxford.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember once at Brookes, so the famous Wimbledon camp.
Yeah.
Henry wanted to break the record for how many 1500s we could do. I forget, it was either 61 or 63 we did across 6 sessions. And back in the day, you would do 1500 spin, 1500 spin, spin, spin. There'd be no recovery paddle. And he just said, Brian, what are we going to do? Going to play a game. We're not going to come in till one of you cry. And we stayed out then for ages. And then finally one of the boys cried.
One of the boys gave it.
Yeah.
Could be anyone who goes down. Yeah. Yeah, Wimbledon is lots of riders have heard stories of those camps being pretty savage.
Savage.
It's funny with when you do race, and we've done seat racing, again, like from the coaching perspective, take timings for fit athletes. It's incredible. Like the first 1 or 2 will obviously be a bit faster, but then basically they could just repeat.
Yeah, how you can just keep producing the same stuff time and time again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just comes down to the training, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, so you will settle into a pace essentially after your first 2 or 3 seat races, and they'll just stay there, because one of the things that we even found out with training is that rowers have an amazing ability to kind of work at a certain percentage of expenditure. So we could stay at, when you're fit and healthy, you could stay at 70% basically forever. Do you remember that time where you did basically like 12 sets of bench press of like 70 kilos and keep going? And we also
just enough rest time to repeat.
It's what we're conditioned to do. Just go.
Yeah.
Power endurance. Yeah. I guess then the only last squad to talk about is the time spent in the GB team, so rowing at Caversham. How did that feel? Physical pressure.
Well, I didn't have a particularly normal time because the majority of it I was so unwell. It was really hard because, I was struggling with the fatigue, but it was undiagnosed. So, I was trying my hardest to produce the numbers that I have done in the past, and I was trying to push on, but my body found it very, very hard. And then you just sort of spiral into this, is it my head? Is it my body? Is it both? So it was very stressful because I didn't know how my body was responding.
How would you describe fatigue? Because I think maybe some of our listeners don't quite know the extent which you mean.
Good question. Fatigue, to me, is just total exhaustion of your body. Not being in control of how your body is feeling, not having any consistency in how you're feeling. One day you could feel fine, the next day you could just not get out of bed. And it's a difference between, I'm tired from training, or I feel sore, or I had a late night and, I just need to have an early night tonight. It's total body exhaustion, really.
So is this what have been referred to as overtraining syndrome?
Yeah, so I've been diagnosed with RED-S, which is relative energy deficiency in sport. And there's not much research around it. It's a relatively new sort of condition, and primarily can affect men and women, but there's more cases where it's affected women. And yeah, it sort of links into, you know, like chronic fatigue, that kind of umbrella.
There's also, I've heard of this, like rhabdo or rhabdomyolysis, which I think is the point at which basically your body starts like breaking down its own proteins.
Yeah.
Is that?
I don't know too much about that, but the experience I had was I'd lost a lot of weight. My hair was snapping and falling out. I developed eczema, as what I later learned to be eczema at least, which was an autoimmune response to the fatigue. My face was swelling up so badly I would have to go to A&E. I constantly felt like I didn't just need a rest, like, oh, I just need to have a sit down and a cup of tea. Like, I need to lie down and I just need to stop. I cried all the time. Like, my tolerance to daily stresses was just non-existent. The whole, and then the psychological side of it is you don't want to go out, you don't want to see your friends, you're too tired to do anything. So it really affects your entire life, to be honest.
How would you say that affected nutrition?
Oh, well, to be honest, nutrition is one of the things that got me into that pickle in the first place. I think it's very tricky for females in sport because you're constantly, well, especially in a sport like rowing where power to weight makes quite a big difference on your time. You know, you constantly think, oh, well, if I'm lighter, I'll go faster. So, I never actively said, oh, I'm not going to eat that because I'm going to be too heavy. But I think subconsciously you think about it all the time. So initially my nutrition was very much like just not adequate, to be honest. Like, I was underfed and overtrained for years, and the cumulative effect that had on my health and my rowing was really, really damaging. And then nutrition during the period of fatigue, I had a lot of support from GB Rowing with nutritionalists and physiologists around, how I can manage my self-training and what I'm putting into my body. So obviously that helped hugely, but there will obviously be days where you're so tired you actually can't make yourself any food. Like, you can't think of anything worse than like making a meal that's got X amount of protein in, 5 lots of fruit and veg, enough carb. Like, even that in itself could be too much. So that's when you start eating things that you probably shouldn't be eating because it's just easier to. So it's, it's such a vicious circle. But now I'm through the other side of it. I think you just got to stay on top of your nutrition every day. Like, if you have a bad week, you'll pay for it 2 weeks down the line. There's a bit of a delay. And yeah, you wouldn't put bad fuel in your car, so don't put bad fuel in your body.
I think rowing is such a repetitive sport as well, in terms of most things, like injuries or illnesses are generally accumulative. Like, it's not like playing a contact sport, you're not gonna snap something, but like if you row in a bad way consistently over a long period of time, you'll give yourself a problem. Like, with nutrition, it's sort of the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's especially as I've got older, I think I've noticed the need for it more. Getting older and this fatigue has sort of coincided at the same time. But when I look back when I was at uni, I'm amazed that I could get through the training I did going off what I ate. It is very important. And I think because for so long I didn't eat what I should have, I didn't see the need until something went wrong.
I think the higher the level gets as well, the more the better you are technically at doing. You're sort of like more efficient at ruining yourself. Like, you just get better at completely exhausting yourself.
Yeah.
So it's just like you get like it just gets easier and easier to not hit those calories.
Yeah.
So, having been through that phase of fatigue, how would you, if you were to do it all over, if you were to speak to 25, 26-year-old Susie, what would you do differently to kind of prevent that, or maybe sort of alter the trajectory of what happened?
A few things. Just eat food. Like, as simple as it seems, eating enough calories to be able to fuel your body and allow your body to recover is so important. And I look back on my younger self and I just think, why did you not do that?
Do you think that was because you were thinking about weight, or you just weren't really thinking?
Both.
Yeah.
I think, when you're at uni, you just go with the flow, don't you? You're not particularly good at planning. Your student kitchen is like the worst thing ever, and you don't want to spend any time in it. So yeah, I think a bit of both. Like, we'd always get weighed and things like that, so weight is constantly on your mind. And yeah, I didn't have any knowledge around nutrition. And at that point, you think you're invincible.
Yeah.
You don't think anything will ever go wrong. So why would you need to have a protein shake or, have a few more fruit and veggies each day? So I think that would be my first bit of advice. Just fuel yourself properly, because it's not just for training that day, it's the accumulative effect on how it's going to affect you in a year's time, 2 years' time. And I think just listen to your body. Don't ignore the warning signs. 2021 was my best season ever, but there were actually a lot of red flags throughout that season, which I proceeded to ignore. My body felt almost numb a lot of the time. I think it's really impressive on one hand how you can be so tired, just don't think you can get through something, and then you hear go and bam, you just switch it on. But there were definitely times where I didn't feel right. I think something that will stick with me for a long time, we were doing a speed order before Henley in the 8. I was in the stroke seat, Morgan was in the coxing seat. And I'm not really a crier in like training sessions. Like, don't get me wrong, I can be in the changing rooms in floods of tears, but during the actual training, like, I generally just get on with it. And I just said to Morgan, I was like in floods of tears, and I just was like, Morgan, I can't do this speed order. Like, I was like, I feel really bad, like I can't do it. Anyway, she was like, Suze, turn around and show the girls. And I'm like crying. And they were like, we're fine, like, we can do it. And I did do it, and I did get through, but my body was telling me I was close to really falling. So yeah, I think don't ignore the red flags. When your body's trying to tell you something, and listen to what it's telling you.
Yeah, you're the only person that knows you, really. And I think it's a difficult line to tread as a coach, because part of your responsibility is to pull out more than what your athlete thinks they have.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's difficult, and I definitely experienced the wrong way in terms of, especially when you're sort of training at Leander and you've given up your job, you're probably like, even if you've got a job, it's something part-time that works around it. Like, you've clearly sort of like devoted your life to it. And then to have coaches, be like, oh, I'm not feeling great this session. I had one time when one of our crew, like, genuinely had like a cold, like heart rate was up, sore throat, whatever. Tried to tell the coach in the morning. He was like, oh, great. Well, now there's 3 guys that can't go out for a session.
Yeah.
And that's not productively gonna, you're not going to get more out of the crew. And sometimes it's difficult to, like I say, especially if you're working with juniors or novices, like, people can try and make up excuses to get out of sessions. And sometimes as a coach, like, it's your responsibility to kind of like push them into it.
Yeah.
But
it must be hard for coaches, because with, fatigue related issues, there's no test.
It's invisible.
It's invisible. It's an invisible illness. And, with something like a stress fracture on your rib, a scan will show that. But to be diagnosed with fatigue, it's through process of elimination. And there's nothing you can do there and then which will say, okay, yeah, you have really overstepped the line from a physical perspective. You need to have a few days backing off. So yeah, I don't envy coaches with having to navigate that, because I think it's a bit of a minefield, to be honest. But as an individual and as an athlete, I think your body very well. We're very in tune with our bodies. And I think there's, a constant internal dialogue of, oh, I don't feel quite right. No, you're fine. You can carry on. Oh, but no, this happened. Or, and it is constantly goes round and round. But I think having that internal conversation with yourself really shows that there probably is something that needs to be addressed, because the sport isn't for the faint-hearted, like if you wanted to do it and you felt like you could do it, you would just get on with it. So yeah, don't listen to your body.
Yeah, I think you do know. You probably almost forget, like when you're in the team and you're constantly, you might be doing your morning check-ins, especially on camp. You'd feel that in, right?
Weigh in the pot.
Yeah, so you weigh in the pot, and you'd get given like how hydrated you were, and then also you'd give like a 1 to 10 on sleep, 1 to 10 on how you feel today. You're checking your heart rate every morning. That becomes quite normal. Like after I finished in the team, I had a bit like a period where I was feeling really tired. I think actually what happened is I went back to playing rugby. I broke my nose a few times. I couldn't really breathe through my nose, so I wasn't sleeping very well. But I kind of knew that something was different for me, and I went to the GP, and I was like trying to explain it, and I could kind of feel like she was just like, oh, like you're not sleeping well. I was like, this is in context of like someone who's like over the last 7 years. Yeah. Like, no, like I know my body, like trying to explain, like I really do know it quite well.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I think like that's something to do, like even if you're not on a squad where you're going to get your wee tested or you're going to have like urea tests in the morning, like you can still wake up every morning, take your heart rate.
Exactly.
And rate how you slept and rate how you feel. Is that something that you did before or more after, or were there any changes like that you made?
I've got a spreadsheet now which goes back for months, and I just do it myself every morning. I will weigh myself once a week. I'll take my heart rate in the morning. I'll say my perceived shape. What else? My perceived shape, my quality of sleep, my heart rate, and then I'll have a column for each session, what the mileage was, what my average heart rate was, how it felt. I don't do it so much on the run up to racing because I don't want to think, oh my God, my heart rate's a few beats higher or something. But I think generally reporting key facts like that over time, you can see trends, and you can look back and see, oh, actually for the past month, my resting heart rate has been creeping up or something. And then you can use that data. That's hard facts that I also often think, like, when you think, oh, is it me just making this up, or is it real? If you've got a fact to back it up with, that's very helpful.
Yeah, because there is that voice in your head that will convince you otherwise. Yeah. And I've one of the times that I tore a disc in my back, I did it power cleaning. Ooh. And I felt it go, but then I was like, no, like it hasn't. Like I'll finish the set. Yeah. So then I went out and finished the whole set on it, and then towards the end of the day, it gets worse and worse and worse. Yeah. So that's definitely like to have that to like back yourself up. Yeah.
And I think the other big bit of advice I would have, listening to your body and fueling yourself efficiently and suitably, they're two like preventative measures. But I think something that I definitely could have done better when I was coming out of the fatigue and rehab is to think, my body doesn't know what split I'm pulling, it only knows how hard it's working. So don't think, oh, okay, I'm back on the ag, I can be pulling the numbers I was before. Be patient with it and be kind to your body. It doesn't know the number, it only knows how hard it's working. So it's only your ego that is being damaged. No one else really cares actually about the number. All that matters is that you're progressing and you're getting healthy again. And by getting on the erg and trying to smash out your UT2 that you would have done before just isn't a way to do it. So yeah, don't look at the number, just go off how you're feeling.
Definitely. And also, if you want to make sure that your career lasts as long as possible, and you have as little interruptions as you can with injuries and other setbacks like fatigue, you have to be thinking long term. There's no use in thinking short term, like this next ergo, this next session. Sometimes it's hard not to, because you're just so bogged down in the day-to-day training where you think, oh shit, it's Wednesday, how am I going to get through to Saturday? But you got to be thinking, like, how am I going to be feeling next season or the year after this? And am I going to burn out? How long's my career going to last? So.
And of course, like, there will be times where you've got a 2K ergo test and, like, it's part of your selection. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I don't feel great. You've got to just go for it. Like, you have to see, okay, this has been the priority for the past 2 weeks. Like, right now it doesn't matter that I'm not feeling my best. I've just got to give it my best on the day. But no, you are right. Like the longevity of your training behaviors are really, really important. And I like the idea of do 100% of the program at 80% rather than 80% of the program at 100%. Like do it all.
Yeah, I had a great one when I had a coach said to me, like, you need to identify a couple of pieces a week, a couple of sessions a week where you really want to perform. Because I was just trying to rinse myself on every single session, and that made a big difference. Because, like you said, then you're running 80% Monday, Tuesday into your half hour Wednesday, and then you fire for it. So yeah, that's something. And then coming back out of it, is there any other things that you like that you did, or anything else that you would change, like returning from illness?
So I've returned from illness twice. First time around, I got it a bit wrong and had to go back and then sort of learnt from my mistakes and redid it. So I first got ill in January 2022. I've had 2 sort of relapses of this fatigue. I tried to come back after being ill for April trials in 2022, but I came back way too quickly. And if you sort of imagine the triangle, you've got to make sure you've got your base at the bottom so it can be a tall peak. And I didn't spend long enough at my base. I sort of got a bit too confident, thought, oh, great, I've got a season's best on this. And, you know, my UT2 is like only a few seconds off or whatever. And I just got a bit sort of carried away with myself and then started tumbling downhill pretty rapidly. So I then had to take a month completely off and work back up from the bottom again. And I think what I did really well second time round is build that base. I spent a lot of time training in a UT3 zone. So that's really quite light in comparison to what we would ordinarily do.
So we were talking, I've noticed that we didn't explain UT1, UT2. So it stands for utilization training zone. So it's generally like a heart rate building zone. So UT1, the heart rate would be like 170, something like that.
Well, it depends on
the individual.
Yeah.
But then if you want to generalize, it will be anaerobic, and then UT2 will be aerobic.
About 150, 150. So UT3, would you be going on heart rate?
So that's probably about half of your 2K wattage, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, so I've got a simple Brookes mind. I would go with UT2, you should be able to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then UT3 is even easier than that. So have a conversation, but, you know, be a bit breathy.
Yeah.
UT3, be able to have a consistent conversation with somebody. My heart rate zone for a UT3 would be average 150, 145. Yeah. I've got quite a high heart rate. A lot of others.
What's your resting heart rate? Morning resting heart rate?
About 54.
Okay, it's not that high.
No.
What's the lowest you know of?
Well, from a training perspective, when I start training, it shoots up.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the girls, their resting heart rate's like 40.
Yeah.
Mine was in the 60s. Yeah.
Oh my God, your poor heart.
I know. But then I could get my heart rate up to 210 when I was doing a 2K, so.
You saw 210?
Mine was like between like maybe 48, 49. But then I wrote, again, this Adam Moffat, I remember, because we used to get told if your heart rate is 10 beats above normal, you definitely don't train. Like that was kind of the cutoff.
Right.
But his is so low that he came in one day and was like, oh, my heart rate's like 48. Like I shouldn't train today. I was like, what?
That's good for me.
Yeah, that's as low as mine gets. Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, it just shows how individual it is, really.
Yeah.
But no, I think spending more time in that UT3 zone, then progressing to UT2, then UT1, sort of really helps set up those key foundations.
So that's sort of like checking the ego, because to go down and row really light and see awful numbers and not be happy with it, like that's a head.
I think just turn the screen away.
Yeah.
Just you don't want to know.
Yeah.
You know, look at it at the end, and then you just got to think, okay, yeah, it's not what I was doing a year ago, but it's better than what I was doing last week, or it's better than what I was doing last month.
Yeah, you've got to measure yourself in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. And it's seeing your progression is very satisfying, because when you first start rowing, you know, you're getting PBs every week, you're seeing big improvements, and then you don't really get that for a long time. Like, I mean, I still haven't PB'd on my 30 minutes since 2019. Like, it's been a long time. But seeing those weekly improvements when you're returning from injury or illness is nice.
Yeah, going back to start mode again.
Yeah. And it's, you know, like having a setback like that is actually a real opportunity to address some of your weaknesses. You know, I didn't spend that much time, like, I feel like I'm talking a lot about Brookes, but we didn't spend that much time training in UT2 zones at Brookes. Like, everything was just really hard. So actually my UT2 wasn't that good. So I was using that time to come back from the fatigue. Actually, my UC2, there was a point where it was the best it had ever been. And, you know, just whether it's, I need to use this time to improve my trunk or improve my technical focus, or, you know, there's loads of things that you can, when you're coming back from something, you've actually got more time to focus on.
Yeah, there's always other stuff that you can do around the outside. And like definitely when you have support from physios and stuff, there's just little things you can get into. I generally think as well, like one of the things that I always used to remember is when someone got injured, being like, oh my God, that's such a bad time to get injured. Like I would never, like I'm so glad I'm not getting injured now. Like my first 6 weeks at Leander, when we were in the trial period, someone got an infection in their hand, like all swelled up. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the worst time to get injured. But then he came back from it and that was fine. And then when I get injured, it always feels like there's never a good time. There's like absolutely never a good time. But the only thing worse than getting injured is coming back too soon and getting
And then going back again.
And it's so easy in hindsight because at the time as well, like you're always chasing, or for me at least, I was never like the standout person in the squad. So I always was kind of chased from the bottom, and then you get stuck in times. I know when I've had a really bad back when I was in the team and I maybe haven't had some performances or I've missed some stuff because of my back. And then like it maybe hadn't been feeling that good that week, but it's Wednesday and it's half-hour day and Jürgen's here and being like, okay, well, like time to do some damage.
Whenever.
Like time to do some damage to myself and like hopefully it's not too much.
Yeah.
But that, again, I think it comes with experience, but also in the squad, like there's a certain... You can't really be a novice in your first year and walk up to your coach and be like, I'm just going on the bike today, mate, because I'm just not quite feeling it with my back, you know? Like it takes a level of experience to know that.
Yeah.
But that was one thing when I went back to Leander from the squad. I wanted to finish my year out at Leander, but I've really, really been struggling with my back. So like I just said to Beachy, I was like, listen, and if it's not a test, I'm going to be on the bike. Yeah. And obviously he trusted that I was going to work and do the same thing on the bike that I would do on the rowing machine. And if anything, I probably got fitter because...
Bikes are savage.
Well, because there's no... what I realise is there's no rate caps. So when we do a low-level ergo for an hour, you're capped at generally 20 at the most, 18, 19 or 20, whereas on the bike you're spinning at any speed you want. So
yeah, but I guess you still train in heart rate zone.
No, probably sometimes maybe, but normally I'd just probably be ragging myself.
Wasn't the thing back then.
So what would you try judge your intensity off of?
I guess I'd have like a watts, like an average watts that I'd want to produce, I guess. So like for like a UT2 session, I'd probably be trying to do like 250, something like that.
UT2 or 250?
I don't know if I'm getting those figures wrong. I think like half hour was always the challenge, was to try and go over 300. Yeah, was to try and get 300.
But a half-hour test on the bike is horrific.
Yeah, it's horrible. Again, because it's not rate capped, so you can sprint.
Do you remember who's got the record for Leander bike half hour, or who used to have it?
Nick Middleton.
No, I think it was Charles Cousins with something like 400, maybe even 450 plus watts. It was absolutely disgusting.
He's a savage. I watched him do his 5K and go sub 6 in the last two. Like imagine doing 3K and then going sub 6.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, so following on from kind of advice coming out of injury, is there any other general advice that you would give either yourself when you were younger or someone who's just starting out? Maybe someone who's done what you did, they've started rowing at uni, they've started to think that they could take this maybe a bit more seriously?
I think, for me looking back, I thought I spent a lot of my time thinking, I'm on the back foot. This person's done this and this person's done that and I haven't done this. I think just remember that everyone is very different. everyone brings very different things to the table. And everyone's experiences are obviously going to be different. Like there is nobody out there who is exactly the same as you. And it's easy to say, oh, I just wish I started a year earlier, or I wish I was at this club. But actually just really lean into your experience, because it makes you the athlete you are and the person you are. And, you know, yeah, it may have been better if you started a year earlier, but actually by starting a year later means that you've had different experiences which will help you in your rowing. You may not see it, and you may not, you may not realize it at the time, but actually having different experiences brings strength, not a negative.
Yeah, it's definitely not a detriment.
Yeah. So yeah, I think just lean in, for lack of a better word, lean into the experiences you've had, whether that's in a rowing setting or not, and use it to the best of your ability.
That's a good one. I don't think have you answered that question? Have you got anything that you would give yourself?
I think just train harder. No, I used to basically think I wanted to do 100% of the training. I was the guy who didn't want to miss a session. So there were times where I've been ill, where I've just been throwing up, or really wasn't feeling up to it. But I used to have this mantra of, there are only 3 acceptable excuses of why you cannot go to training. 1, both your arms are broken and you cannot row. 2, both your legs are broken and you cannot walk to training. Or 3, you've died. So unless one of those 3 is applicable, you go to fucking training no matter what.
Right. Yeah, that to me screams me when I was 18 to 20, and I also thought I was invincible and nothing would break me.
I think we've all been in that phase, but I think looking back, there's times where A, I should have gone to training when I didn't, and B, I shouldn't have gone to training when I did. So I think there's strengths and weaknesses to that approach.
Yeah, I think like train smarter, not harder,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent. Yeah, I think like probably one of the best pieces of advice I got was off Anne Redgrave, who's the team doctor, and obviously was looking after me. My back was done, and she was like, "You're the only person that's looking out for you." And it's not to say that other people don't have your health as part of their interest, but it's only part of it.
Yeah.
And to you, it is everything that you've got. So like you need to. Sometimes you're going to have to turn around to your coach and be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't do this session. And I think it's about it grows over time, but like having trust in your ability a little bit. And like you said, like not always necessarily trying to rush back, just trying to think about, I guess what we discussed already, like longevity, like what's actually going to be more helpful for me in the long term. And sometimes that means going slower. So for me, when I first turned up, Leander used to call me the prawn, because my back was just like bent over like that. I've got quite a long back anyway. I hadn't done enough core work. But I've been rowing that way so long, like I really struggled to try and row differently and see my scores come down. So I guess also like check the ego. And I think like if you're going to succeed in any way, like you have to be able to take criticism, and you have to be able to like just let that bit go and just be like, look, we're going to break this down, and the next 2 weeks my scores are going to be shocking, but I'm going to just work out this different way to do it.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to look out for yourself more, how do you overcome the feeling of guilt of trying to not let your teammates down? Because I'm sure that it would be an easier decision to skip a couple of training sessions, but don't you feel like you're letting the team down? How do you overcome that, or how would you deal with it?
Yeah, so it's not about, for me, I would say it's not about trying to do less, or I think it's, like you said, it's more about just kind of listening to what you need. I think ultimately, deep down, like if you really ask yourself a question, like deep down, like should you be going rowing? Like you kind of know if you could or you couldn't. Occasionally, maybe there'll be an opportunity where you don't feel great, but you have to go out. Like if you were racing anyway, like you get out and you can put a performance in, and like I think you can surprise yourself, and you can kind of take some power in that, from knowing that even when you're not feeling completely your best, you can still put a performance down. But I think it's just a case of like understanding that like harder isn't always better, and like saying like, oh, I didn't like absolutely end myself on that ergos, therefore I've let my crew down. Like, no, like actually by not destroying myself, that we're going to have a better session tomorrow, or, you know, I'm not going to like get myself ill and miss the next week. So it's just kind of like changing that perspective and just understanding that sometimes, you know, having you could do 3 sessions on a Jaffa cake and you can be like, yeah, I'm really hard and that makes me strong because I haven't had to take any food, but like harder isn't always better. Like, I guess sometimes it's just trying to be sensible, but that comes with time.
Ultimately, you'd be letting your team down more if you missed the most important races in the spring season. So again, try and look ahead, think in terms of seasons, not in terms of sessions or weeks, if possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. And yeah, in the ideal situation, no one in the crew would ever miss a session. Everyone would always do everything the hardest they can. Everyone would always be getting PBs, but that just doesn't exist. In my 10 years of rowing, I've never, ever come across anyone who can do that. So I think it's all about just managing the situation and coming up with a plan that has the performance, you know, at the heart of the decision.
Yeah, cool. Amazing. I've got some quick fire on questions that I wanted to ask.
Go on then.
What's your favorite crew type and why?
I would have always said a women's pair. I love how much you contribute to it. Being 50% of a crew is pretty cool. And it'd be quite bad if it doesn't go to plan. But yeah, I'd say a women's pair. Like when you get that up and running and when it clicks, it's really special. But in recent months, I would say a single. I really enjoy learning a new skill. And I think the same reasons as why I like the pair, the single is just more exaggerated. You know, it's only you. It's you and the boat.
It's all on you, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Morg. I didn't say a women's aid.
I'm sure she'll get over it. This is going to be an interesting one. If you could choose to be a part of any squad in the world and like a crew in their training program, what would it be and why?
Any rowing squad?
Yeah.
Probably an American university.
Which one?
Oh, I don't know which one. Virginia.
It's that uni mentality.
Yeah. The 2 girls I know from Virginia, Heidi Long and Abby Bird, they remind me so much of each other, and the ethos that they have and it's infectious to the rest of the team. And I just think that must be a really awesome team to be part of.
You see some of the stuff on like TikTok and Instagram, like 50 or 60 ergs in a room, everyone actually going for like the size of the programs. Like it's like really fun.
It's like Brookes rowing on steroids.
Yeah, it just makes you want to train.
Yeah,
you look at that and you're like, oh, I want to be part of those.
Yeah,
I also want to get that job fixing the row machines.
So if you're listening, get in touch. Inquiries@rogia.com.
Yeah, I'm happy to fly over to the States to come and fix your row machines.
Sweet. Out of all the places that you've rowed and tried rowing, or maybe like you did some training camps, what are your top 3?
Top 3 locations. So my favourite place, I think, is probably Penrith in Australia. At the weekends, we would go and so Sydney Rowing Club train in Sydney, which like in the centre of the city. That was also really cool, like rowing in Sydney Harbour, but at the weekends, we would go and train in Penrith, and it was just so cool. Like you'd go down this sort of little estuary almost, and the trees and not quite a mountain, but I'll say a mountain to add to effect. But you know, it'd be up really high around you, and it'd be a little sort of estuary, and you know, you'd hear all these little like birds and stuff like that. It just felt like you were a million miles away, and that was a pretty cool place.
Magical.
Yeah.
So that's
number one. Yeah. That's number one. Number 2, I've got to love the Brookes Strait. Brookes Strait down at Wallingford, like best place in the world. Yeah.
That's funny. Morgan also said her home turf. I think that's one something like always holds memories for first.
Yeah, I feel maybe that should be number 1. Yeah, I actually told my family that's where I want my ashes spread. So anyone listening, pay attention. I love it though.
But only during for a side-by-side battle paddle.
Yeah, and you're smashing your blade into the bush as you've all been rammed down it. No, there's something really, really special about Wallingford.
It's a nice bit of water.
Yeah. Number 3. I mean, just for the experience, I've got to say Shanghai in China.
Yeah.
It was something else out there. It really was.
Yeah. I've heard quite a few people again say that because they have the 2007 Junior Worlds, because they normally hold it as like a
Right.
like to test it out. So obviously Junior Worlds in 2007, 2008, and then FISA as well. So I've heard a lot of people say they like that. It was just like
It was just really
just huge and just crazy.
it was just a completely different experience. Like, I think the reason why I like Penrith was because of the surroundings. Brookes, it has changed my life, that stretch of river. And then China, it was just, I've never experienced anything like it. Like, it was boiling hot. You had to go to the toilet in a hole in the ground. And it was just very, very different.
Definitely one thing about rowing is it can take you to some strange places that you would otherwise never ever visit.
Yeah.
We did in 2010, we did Belarus. This was absolutely just weird.
Yeah.
Like really like time travel.
Yeah.
And like we stayed, the hotel was rough, but like GB Rain had gone out the year before to like scout a good hotel, and they're like, this is like the best hotel in the city. It's like, wow.
We'll see about that.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's your favorite race that you've ever done, or that you'd like to do again when you're like 60, 70?
My favorite race, and I've thought this for a while now, it would be Brookes Regatta in 2015.
You like Nottingham that much, yeah?
I love Nottingham. Yeah, it's a great place. No, we were in the Cox's 4 and we'd hardly raced it. We'd never raced it. We'd hardly trained in it. It was just sort of a add-on to the weekend. And we weren't expecting big things, but we just thought, as we're here, may as well do another race. And we did the time trial, and I can't remember exactly, but I think we came 2nd or 3rd in the time trial, and it was all very, very small margins. And that's when we kind of thought, oh shit, like we can actually win this if, we put our minds to it. And we won the semi into the A final, and it was just one of those races where the plan came together. We all just really bought into it, and it was really special. And I think that's probably a turning point in Brookes women. Up until that point, we hadn't won a huge amount, but we got our first championship gold medal.
Yeah.
Yeah, success for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So out of everything I've done since, doing it with those girls and to be the underdogs and come out on top was really cool.
Cool. Tom, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, thanks so much for coming on. I could really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be doing some other bits and pieces together as we go along. We'll definitely have you on again to do some more podcasts. We'll hopefully do one with the whole team. We've got 6 coming. But no, really appreciate it. I really appreciate your insight, and hopefully, I know that a lot of what you said is going to resonate with people, and I think that a huge part of doing this podcast was being able to get that kind of information out to people who are also feeling like they're struggling, or just different little ways to maybe avoid some of the pitfalls that we've been through. So to hear those things, and for you being honest about how you got it wrong sometimes and then how you fixed it is amazing. That's absolutely everything that we wanted to kind of do with this podcast. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Susie. Like Tom said, I think it's really great to touch upon the parts of rowing that not many people speak about, because I think it's also so important to know how to spot those red flags in advance. And maybe, we're going to spare you a couple of injuries or a few months of, just staying out of the boat, and hopefully this can inspire some people who maybe have been struggling to kind of push on and then continue their rowing journey and get the most out of their boat, and maybe get some more international vests under their wings. So thank you.
No, thanks for having me. I love rowing, and it's completely changed my life for the better. So, if you're just starting out and, you think, oh my God, it's a big, scary world. It's not. We're all just normal people. Have fun every day and, look after yourself and see where it will get you.
Awesome. where can people find you online?
Instagram. I actually don't know what my Instagram handle is.
Should I tell you?
Yeah.
It's Susie_Dear.
Okay.
Surprise, surprise.
That's where you can find me. Original.
Awesome. So I think that just about wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely share this video out to those who might derive some value from this. And for now, easy there.
Cue the music.